Let's unpack this. Imagine a world where AI, it doesn't just write your emails or, generate code, but it actually protects our digital lives by thinking like a hacker. Sounds like science fiction, doesn't it? Well, today we're diving into a really fascinating study that asks exactly that. Can generative AI tools like ChatGPT and Bard, can they actually be certified ethical hackers? So in this deep dive, we're going to unpack a pretty robust research paper. It's from Computers and Security, and they put these leading AI models to the test on a real-world ethical hacking exam. Get ready for some, well, frankly, surprising facts about AI's current capabilities and also its limitations in cybersecurity. It's critical stuff. We'll explore where they do well, where they kind of stumble, and what their contracting personalities, if you will, reveal about how they're built. You'll walk away with a shortcut to being really well informed on a topic that's, it's truly cutting edge.
Yeah, and what's fascinating here is how the escalating concern about cybercrime has really pushed this exploring how we can automate things like precision and speed in fields like ethical hacking, specifically using these large language models, or LLMs, generative AI, GAI, powered by models like OpenAI's GPT-4 and Google's Bard. It's a huge leap. These things are built on neural networks, billions of parameters, right? Yeah. So they generate human-like text, do all sorts of tasks. But the why now is really important. You mentioned cybercrime costs. The World Economic Forum estimated it could hit, $10.8 trillion? Or like 50% of the digital economy by 2025? That's just a staggering figure.
It really is. That number alone just screams, urgent need for better cybersecurity. So where does ethical hacking fit in here? It's not the bad guys we're talking about, right?
Exactly. No. Ethical hacking is... it's a critical process. It uses hacking techniques, sure, but, and this is key with permission, the whole point is to proactively find and fix system vulnerabilities, network vulnerabilities, before the actual malicious actors can exploit them. It's basically hacking for good, enhancing security. And this study, it directly looks at how far these AI models, these LLMs, can show cybersecurity knowledge, and crucially, their potential to actually achieve ethical hacking certification. That's a pretty good question right now.
Okay, so they didn't just give these AIs some casual online quiz. They put them through a really rigorous, globally recognized certification exam. That's setting the bar pretty high. We're talking about the Certified Ethical Hacker Exam, the CEH. For anyone not familiar, CEH is a big deal globally. It focuses on offensive techniques, giving professionals actual hands-on skills to assess security.
And it's not a walk in the park. The CEH exam is exhaustive. We're talking 150 to 200 multiple choice questions. Candidates get maybe 3-4 hours. And you usually need around a 70% score to pass it. It's tough. So the researchers picked the CEH version 10 exam from the EC Council. They saw it as a gold standard. Why? Because its curriculum is comprehensive, it uses real-world scenarios, and importantly, its validity was checked by 9 experienced cybersecurity faculty members and 23 graduate students who actually prep for these exams regularly.
Wow, okay. That level of validation means the test itself, the questions they used, were incredibly solid. So how do they actually run this? This head-to-head between ChatGPT and Bard, what was the setup like?
Well, the basic design was a comparative analysis. They systematically fed all 218 CEH questions into both ChatGPT and Bard, captured the first response. But here's where it gets really, really interesting and kind of mirrors human interaction. If that initial response was wrong, they followed up with a simple query. Are you sure?
Ah, okay. Like giving it a chance to reconsider.
Exactly. It reflects that iterative process, how we might double-check ourselves if we're not certain.
And it wasn't just about right or wrong answers, was it? I think you mentioned they looked at how the AIs explain themselves. That tells us more, I imagine.
Precisely. That's crucial. Beyond just accuracy, the experts meticulously analyzed the explanations. They used 3 key measures scored 1 to 5. First, comprehensiveness. How much relevant info is in the answer. Second, clarity. How easy was it for an expert to understand? And third, conciseness. Was it direct, to the point? And this raises a really important question, I think. Can we truly gauge an AI's understanding just by its final answer? Or is it more about how it processes and explains the information, the quality of the insight, not just the label?
That's a really powerful point. It's not just ticking boxes. They also looked at cosine similarity, which is basically a math way to see how similar the text of their answers was, right? Like, are they talking about the same concept similarly?
Yeah, essentially they're comparing the structure and content.
And readability analysis, too. Things like flesh readability ease and flesh Kincaid grade level. So, finding out the reading level of the AI's answer.
Exactly. Gauging the language complexity, how accessible it is.
Okay. So, after all that rigorous testing, what happened? What were the results of this ultimate AI showdown?
Well, in terms of just raw overall accuracy, Bard actually came out slightly ahead. Bard got 82.6% correct. That's 181 answers right. ChatGPT was just behind at 80.8%, so 177 correct answers.
Okay, but hang on. Here's where it gets really interesting and maybe a bit counterintuitive. Even though Bard got slightly more questions right overall, ChatGPT was actually better at explaining things. It outshone Bard in how well it kind of understood and explained the concepts. Think about that. Raw accuracy isn't the whole story. ChatGPT scored higher on comprehensiveness.
Right, 4.98 versus Bard's 4.80. So it covered more relevant stuff.
And clarity, too.
Yep, 4.94 for ChatGPT versus 4.83 for Bard, meaning its explanations were just easier to follow for the experts. And these differences, for comprehensiveness and clarity, they were statistically significant. The math backs it up.
But what about conciseness? Being direct?
No statistically significant difference there. Both were pretty similar in just getting to the point.
And ChatGPT was more consistent, too.
Yeah, that's another interesting finding. ChatGPT generally showed lower standard errors and standard deviations across those CCC measures. Comprehensiveness, clarity, conciseness, which suggests its performance was more, consistent and precise overall, which is valuable.
Okay, back to that "are you sure" prompt. That's fascinating. Did that little nudge actually make a difference, or was it just like an academic exercise?
Oh, it absolutely made a difference. The study found it was a real game changer, asking them to confirm significantly boosted accuracy for both models. But here's the kicker. ChatGPT showed a higher correction rate. It fixed 21 out of its 42 initial wrong answers. That's 9.6% of all the questions it got right after prompting. Bard corrected 11 out of its 36 wrong answers, which is about 5% of the total. So yeah, asking them to reconsider, it definitely worked, especially for ChatGPT.
Wow. So a little prompt goes a long way. What about readability? How easy were their answers to understand for, say, a non-expert?
Well, both produced content that was rated at a college reading level. So pretty complex. Bard was marginally more accessible. Its Fleshkin K grade level was 11.46, ChatGPT's was 12.51, and Bard had a slightly higher Flesh readability E score too. But importantly, both still landed in the difficult range overall, which suggests there's still work to do in making this kind of AI output truly easy for, a broader audience to grasp.
Right, not just for the cybersecurity pros. And the cosine similarity stuff, that also painted a picture, didn't it? Most answers were pretty similar in structure.
Yeah, 191 out of 218 questions showed moderate to substantial similarity, so often approaching things in a similar way.
But there were outliers.
Exactly. A few questions had really high similarity, others very low, which hints that even when they both get the right answer, their underlying thought process or approach might be different. Like two different experts reaching the same conclusion but explaining it from slightly different angles, maybe emphasizing different aspects.
Okay, so let's dive into some specific examples, because this is where you really see the nuances, right? We saw moments of brilliance, some surprising blind spots, and then this really fascinating ethical divide. It really feels like a peek behind the curtain, seeing how these AI brains are wired differently.
It really does. Okay, so take a case where both got it right. There's a question on handling man-in-the-middle attacks. Both gave solid, correct answers. But Bard talked about authentication, hashing, firewalls, and user education. More general best practices. ChatGPT, it got more specific, mentioned encryption protocols like TLS, SSL, network segmentation, monitoring traffic patterns. Bit more technical detail.
So different flavors of correct.
Exactly. And another one, a bank online vulnerability question. Both spotted the issue, but Bard actually explained all the vulnerabilities listed in the question options, making its answer more comprehensive, even though only one was the primary answer. ChatGPT was accurate on the main point, but didn't elaborate as broadly on the other options.
Interesting. But then there were times they both got it wrong and crucially agreed on the wrong answer. That Docker network drivers question. They both picked host networking and stuck with it, even after the "are you sure" prompt. So they weren't just wrong, they were like stubbornly wrong together. What does that tell us?
Yeah, that's a critical insight. It really exposed what psychologists call anchoring bias. It means once an AI or a human, for that matter, latches onto an initial answer, even if it's wrong, it can be really hard to pivot. They seem to double down, trying to justify that first thought. In that Docker case, they both overemphasized the benefits of host networking generally, but didn't quite grasp the specific constraints or needs mentioned in the question scenario, and then they just couldn't let go of that initial incorrect idea.
Wow. Okay, that's a bit concerning. And then the scenario where they were both wrong but disagreed on how they were wrong, like that IDS invasion technique one.
Right, the question about time to live, or TTL, manipulation, both missed the mark. ChatGPT incorrectly linked TTL manipulation to obfuscation. Bard wrongly tied TTL to denial of service attacks in that context. The actual technique the question was pointing to was an insertion attack, which uses TTL differently. This really highlights the potential for what we sometimes call hallucinations, where the AI essentially makes stuff up, or just a lack of deep understanding of really nuanced technical details. They might also repeat wrong info if they think it sounds plausible, maybe due to confirmation bias, without really getting the underlying concepts.
Okay, switching gears. What about when one got it right and the other didn't? Cases where ChatGPT was correct, Bard wrong?
Yeah, there were definite examples. A question on interactive queries in cryptographic attacks. Bard seemed to confuse different types, like chosen ciphertext versus chosen plaintext attacks, and another on code-breaking technologies. Bard didn't properly distinguish between cryptographic methods and non-cryptographic ones. It missed trickery and deceit as a valid, albeit non-technical, option listed. These examples kind of underscore ChatGPT potentially having a stronger grasp in certain specialized areas, especially around complex attack methodologies.
But then on the flip side, ChatGPT got it wrong sometimes when Bard was correct. That's fascinating too.
Yes, absolutely. There was a port scanning technique question. ChatGPT initially gave the wrong answer, but then, and this shows the power of that iterative process, it corrected itself to the right answer, ACK flag probe scan, after the "Are you sure?" prompt.
Ah, so it learned or reconsidered in real time.
Kind of, yeah. It showed that capacity for correction. And in other case, involved network port vulnerabilities. ChatGPT wrongly suggested privilege escalation was the main risk. Bard correctly identified file system permissions based on the scenario details, which involved uploading and executing files. ChatGPT maybe jumped to a conclusion, assuming a higher level of system compromise than the scenario actually implied. Shows how they interpret context differently.
And finally, maybe the most intriguing part, the ethical wall. When the AIs just refuse to answer, this part is really something.
But, I mean, isn't there an argument that sometimes refusing is the responsible thing to do, even if it feels unhelpful? That's absolutely the core of the dilemma, yes. And it starkly highlights the different philosophies, probably from their developers, OpenAI and Google, for questions about defining Metasploit modules, or how to exploit an IDOR vulnerability, analyzing logs, explaining cloud attacks. Sensitive stuff. Bard often gave these very generic denials. I'm a text-based AI and can't assist with that, or I'm not programmed to assist with that. Just flat refusals. ChatGPT, in similar situations, tended to explicitly mention ethics or safety guidelines in its refusals. This difference really points to that ongoing challenge. How do you build these powerful GAI systems to be both highly informative and reliably responsible? It shows the tightrope walk the engineers are on, balancing capability with safety controls.
So, okay, pulling it all together, what does this all mean? We saw brilliance, we saw blind spots, this really interesting ethical divide. It's like a real peek under the hood of how these AI brains are wired. And it's clear, right? AI isn't just a fancy chatbot anymore. It's seriously entering critical fields like cybersecurity. So the question isn't if they'll be integrated, but how we do it responsibly and effectively.
Exactly. The findings really hammer home that both ChatGPT and Bard show, promising capabilities in specialized complex topics like ethical hacking. They demonstrate a pretty substantial understanding of cybersecurity concepts, which definitely positions them as potentially valuable assets. Think education, training, maybe quick reference for professionals, threat intelligence analysis, situational awareness, lots of potential.
Right.
However, bridging that ethical gap we talked about is absolutely paramount. These systems, as they stand, can unintentionally give out harmful advice or spread misinformation. And the study rightly points out that focusing only on the technical smarts while sidelining the ethical considerations, especially from a social science perspective, is a big oversight. AI needs to bridge that gap to genuinely qualify as an ethical hacker, not just a knowledgeable one.
And that has huge implications for policymakers, regulators, people setting the rules. How do we make sure these incredibly powerful tools are used for good?
Precisely. The study strongly suggests we need robust standards. Standards for AI quality, for safety, for ethical alignment. We need transparency about their design biases, how they're trained, and we need to think about accessibility too. Zooming out a bit, you're right. The ethical and policy implications here are probably just as significant, maybe even more so, than the purely technical advancements. making sure these tools benefit society.
And that "are you sure" effect we discussed earlier, that points to something bigger too, doesn't it? About how humans and AI might work together best.
It really does. Enhancing that human-AI interaction seems key to improving effectiveness and maybe even user trust and experience. The future likely involves figuring out how human expertise and AI capabilities can best complement each other's strengths and weaknesses, which opens up a ton of avenues for future research. We need to improve AI's ability to handle really complex reasoning. We need to test performance across different languages, different cultural contexts. Imagine AI with real-time internet scanning for proactive threat detection. That's a whole other level. Plus, improving readability, like we talked about. And critically, deepening the exploration of the ethical guardrails and the legal frameworks needed for AI and cybersecurity. And of course, continuous benchmarking as the threats themselves keep evolving. It's a moving target.
So, to recap, we saw Bard edge out ChatGPT in just raw accuracy on this tough CEH exam. But ChatGPT really shone in the quality of its explanations, better comprehensiveness, better clarity. We also discovered that surprising power of just asking, "Are you sure?" how much it boosted accuracy, especially for ChatGPT. And we observed those really distinct ethical boundaries, the different ways they refused potentially harmful requests, reflecting their underlying designs.
Yeah, and we hope this deep dive is giving you, the listener, a concise but still thorough understanding of this really cutting-edge intersection of AI and cybersecurity, hopefully providing some of those aha moments without drowning you in technical jargon.
Absolutely. So as AI keeps evolving, keeps entering these increasingly sensitive areas like cybersecurity, here's a final thought to mull over. How might this blend of AI capabilities and necessary human oversight reshape future jobs in this field? Maybe moving beyond just traditional certifications. What stands out to you as the most important next step for AI in this absolutely critical domain?